welcome to this episode of Women, Sex, God, Power. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about psychic protection, energetic protection, how to protect your energy during this very energetically charged time in the world so that you are still able to step out and do your work without feeling like you need to hyper protect yourself, not say certain things that you desire to speak on, maybe limit your emotional range or limit your creative expression because you're afraid of the backlash. My goal with this transmission is to make you aware of the fact that you are always energetically and psychically protected, regardless as to whether it feels that way or not. And how most of this actually comes down to boundary work more than anything else that you could do. Boundaries and also intuitive intelligence. So needless to say, we're existing in very energetically charged and destabilizing times, and that's not going to get better anytime soon, right? As far as the astrology is concerned, this is going to be something that is continuing up until 2030. So buckle up, because we're just going to have to ride the wave. This is not about waiting for things to calm down. This is not about waiting for the rest of the world to mirror stability and coherence and certainty back at you. This is about becoming so steadfast and emotionally contained and grounded and aware of what is your energy, what is not your energy, where your boundaries begin and where they end, and developing the energetic awareness of your environment and the people that you are communicating with and the relationship that you have with your audience, especially if you're any kind of leader or mentor, guide, artist, whatever, so that you can navigate these times from a place of power rather than from a place of merging with the rest of the collective. Because a lot of the time when we're going through any sort of collective upheaval, the tendency is to respond with, well, I'm just going to wait until we get to the other side of this. I'm just going to wait until things calm down. That's not gonna happen, because we have this massive shift that has happened with Neptune moving out of Pisces and into Aries. And Aries is a sign of leadership and domination and also impulsivity in many ways and emotional volatility. Okay, it is a fire zodiac sign after all, and it is ruled by Mars. I know for myself, as someone that has Aries in Mars, that there has been a lot of aggression and hostility and a rage that has been coming online for me, particularly as we passed January the 26th and we begin to move closer to the year of a horse. And that emotional volatility or drive or ferocity is going to manifest through people differently. So for people who are conscious and awakened and know how to harness the power of Aries and use it to contribute to collective missions or to develop their own mission to benefit the rest of the collective in some way, then this energy is going to be really productive and beneficial. But for our world leaders and for, the sector of humanity who have not gone through any form of spiritual awakening, any form of initiation and deep psychological processes that would enable them to expand their consciousness and become more aware of what is truly them and what is just distortions of the lower ego and inherited collective patterns and fear-mongering and propaganda and acting out of unconsciousness. This energy is going to bring a lot of chaos, as you can already see with what's happening with ICE. And all of these archaic movements and setups that are trying to move us back into the 14th century, it would seem. So that energy is going to manifest differently for everyone, depending on where they are in their journey of consciousness and awakening, how in resonance they are with the collective themes of the time, and how much they've managed to move from the desires of the lower ego and personal gain and self-seeking motives and attention-seeking motives, and transmute those desires into something bigger and more conscious and more abundance-yielding that is going to really benefit us as a collective community, as a humanity. I'm mentioning the lower ego a lot here because when we are young, for some of us, even when we're older, but when we are, let's say, not in terms of biology here, but when we're spiritually young, when we are spiritually young and when we're in the early stages of developing our awareness and becoming more conscientious, we come in with a lot of primal desire for the self, the desire to predominantly benefit the self, to make sure that the individual self is gaining, is growing in hierarchy, in status, in power, but power over others rather than power that is offered as a gift to the rest of the collective. So when we are in the early stages of our evolution, our psychological, spiritual evolution, there's not much focus on anything that is benefiting or concerning other people, right? It's all of the focus is on the self, all of the focus is on how can I have more power? How can I be more respected? How can I make more money? How can I be seen, elevated above the rest of society, the rest of the world? How do I make sure that I gain, even if it's at the expense of others? On the other hand, when we mature in consciousness, when we move through these initiation processes where we realize that actually the desires of the ego are not that exciting. They're not as exciting as the ego thinks they are. And it keeps us in this loop and this addictive wheel of needing to gain more and more and more to keep those dopamine hits coming. The person who is dedicated to their spiritual evolution hopefully evolves out of that. And then the concern begins to be focusing on the community, on the gain of others. I digressed a little bit. I'm going to get to the psychic protection part. But the reason that I'm mentioning all of this is because in our fear of what is happening in the world, in our fear of being destabilized, of being taken off path, in being sabotaged by those who are not on the same path, those who are destructive, self-destructive, and not conscious and not awake to the impact of their behaviors and their thinking and the belief systems and programs that they've inherited and are running on, in our desire to keep ourselves safe and keep ourselves on path, we can end up going into a state of isolation and cocooning and believing that we have to withdraw from the world, avoid being involved in political movements, avoid speaking on the themes of this time. I know for a lot of spiritually sensitive women, this can be a huge struggle to not merge with the rest of the collective, to stay connected to their own energy, to their own mission, to their purpose, to stay in their own energy and grounded and sovereign, but at the same time continue showing up for what they believe in. This is the balance that we're going to have to do during this time, because your soul did not come here to play it safe. It did not come to planet Earth to experience safety. If it did, I can assure you it would have chosen any other planet, any other dimension to have that experience in. But it chose to come to Earth with the intention of being here at this time. I know that you might be cursing your choices around about now. I know that sometimes I do. I know that I often question my choices as a soul prior to incarnating for this particular moment. But you did not come here to experience safety. You came here for transformation. You came here to awaken and turn up all of your senses, your full capacity, potential, and power to experience these times that we're living in and contribute to them as the most authentic and empowered version of yourself. And most importantly, contribute without merging with the noise of the collective, without getting pulled into the despair, the hopelessness, the pain, the suffering, the jadedness, the misery, the AI agendas, the people online who are saying, is being a creative or is making art even worth it anymore because AI is replacing us? Well, the answer is bloody yes, because if not you, who's going to do it? If not a small sector of people who are choosing to believe in the power of art and creativity that is born through the vessels of fully alive and fully feeling human beings. If not you, then who? Because if the vast majority of humanity are now choosing to give up and falling into a state of despair, then who does that leave when it comes to the creation and the preservation of art, which is birthed through the consciousness of a fully feeling human with stories and a history and traumas and empathy and yearning for something better, yearning for something more, and is able to pour their personal pain and their grief and their losses into their music and into their art and make us all feel a little bit more alive as a consequence of it. If not you, then who? Because in these times especially, a lot of people are going to be falling into that despair. They are going to be giving up, maybe on their dreams, maybe on the dream that they had for their old life when we were in the old world that no longer exists. Okay, a lot of us have to go through this collective grief and this collective loss, myself included. There are so many things that I wanted to achieve and I wanted to grow and wanted to experience at this point in my life. Don't think that I'm an exception to this rule, no matter how optimistic I might sound when I show up and offer these perspectives. It's my job to be an optimist, okay? It's my job to do that, but offline, off screen, off camera, I have my own personal grief and pain around, right, well, I don't know how much longer platforms like Instagram or whatever are going to be around. And I haven't, because of my own personal trauma healing journey, I haven't had the opportunity to grow my Instagram and grow my audience to the extent that I would have liked to the last few years. And there is a mourning and a loss in feeling that you might not be able to reach all of the people that needed your art or needed your message or needed your work. And by the way, that's the least of the grievances and the losses that I've reflected on or had to go through. That's the least of them, but I'm giving you the most trivial, lighter manifestation of how I'm experiencing this. We're all experiencing this sense of not having managed to achieve what we would have liked to when the world was maybe a little bit more orderly. But that doesn't mean that we just give up and we just stop and we just, check out of the human experience because of all of the shifts that are happening now. You have to continue showing up regardless, because as I said, if it's not you that's going to hold on to that creative vision and those artistic desires and that dream that you have for your life, and that is still very possible, even if it has to slightly change form, then who? Then who is going to do it, right? You've got to start thinking like that. Don't assume that somebody else out there is going to come and give you the answer. I know for myself that nobody has ever given me the answer. I have never had the privilege or the luxury of being able to turn outwards and find examples or representations of other Arab women, other Egyptian women who are manifesting and creating on behalf of their community, on behalf of their culture and their heritage, and preserving the essence of our culture as Arab Arabian women with voices that have been historically so suppressed by, unfortunately, our own people, by our own men, by religion, by Islam. Whether you want to accept that or not, it is a reality for most women in the Middle East and also in Persia. So I've never had the luxury or privilege of being able to turn outwards and look for other women who could offer me that blueprint or that way or that dream. I had to become the dream. I had to become steadfast and resolute in choosing to represent and embody something that I was not seeing through my own people. And I would highly advocate and recommend that you do the same. In fact, it is your duty to do the same. Whether you feel like it or not, most days of a week you probably won't feel like it, but it's deciding and choosing to do it anyway, because what else are you going to do with your precious time on this earth? Do you have anything better to do? Do you have anything better to do than pursuing the creative vision and the dream that you have for your life? Do you have anything better? Do you have anywhere else more important to be? Think about it. Really think about it, of all the things that you could be doing, of all the places you could be right now. I'm sure that there are some places that you'd like to be. I would like to be in another dimension with my dragons, with my pet dragons, that I very viscerally remember having as pets in a previous incarnation. So this is a little fantasy for me that I drift off into regularly when I'm feeling a little bit dismayed. I would prefer to be in a dimension similar to Avatar, riding one of my dragons over the beautiful mountainous scenery and oceans, Lord of the Rings style. Do you have anywhere better to be? Do you have something more important to be doing than contributing your voice and your power to the collective? Only you have the answer to that. This has been a 25-minute intro, and I haven't even got into the topic of today's transmission. Okay, so let me begin by saying that every woman is born with an intuitive field, an energetic field of protection around her. This is something that you naturally come in embodying. Much of the psychic and intuitive protection that you naturally hold as a woman comes from your perception, comes from your self-awareness of it, okay? It can be there, it can be surrounding you, but if you have no awareness of it and no awareness of how to use it and activate it, then it's pretty damn useless. This is about boundaries and intuitive intelligence. So you are sensing into the energetic environment around you. You are sensing into what is the next right move. What are the people that I want to be working with, surrounding myself with? What is a waste of my energy? What is a waste of my time? What is feeding me? What is benefiting me? These are the questions that we ask ourselves as women when we are intuitively, energetically aware of our environment, of our circumstances. We are attuned and we're switched on and we're asking the right questions because we want to make sure that we are living in sovereignty, because we want to ensure that in every moment of our lives, we are showing up with the maximum amount of self-awareness. This obviously shifts and changes depending on many, many different things. The cycle that you're in, your level of energy and, how much vitality you have in the moment. But energetic protection begins with self-awareness. It begins with advocating for your boundaries. So when we talk about psychic protection, this is less about having a lot of shielding around you, doing all the visualizations of being contained inside of a protective bubble, although you can do that if you want, or doing the right ritual practices, right? A lot of the time when women come to me and they ask me, what do you do for psychic protection? I think there's an expectation that I'm going to list a bunch of ritual practices, which can be very useful and very beautiful and something that you can still do as an additional practice. But my number one answer is I just have an awareness that I am in my body, that I'm in my power. Anything that is not in resonance, any person, any energy, any collective thought form, because we're not just talking about other people's emotions and energies, we're also talking about the collective thought forms, right? Cannot infiltrate my field. They cannot influence me. They cannot dampen my appetite, my enthusiasm, my drive, my desire. That awareness of what is entering into your field and what you are choosing to give attention to and what you are choosing to not feed and not give attention to is the most powerful psychic protective practice you can utilize in your everyday existence. Because if I have awareness that at this time particularly, there is a collective thought form that a lot of people are feeling and therefore feeding, and that collective thought form is, there's no point making art anymore. There's no point pursuing the dreams or aspirations I once had because AI is taking over everything. AI is replacing human creativity. If I have an acute and amplified awareness that that is a collective thought form and it's entering into my field because I'm still part of the human experience and I'm very energetically open as a channeler and as a very spiritually sensitive woman, I have an awareness that that is a thought form and that is also not mine. And in that awareness that it is not mine, I do not need to feed it. I do not need to give it attention or power. I take my attention away from it. I recognize that it's there. I recognize that it's now part of this collective global experience that a lot of people are having, but I do not feed it or give it my power, my energy, my fear. Okay? So that is one of the biggest psychic protection exercises that you can do above all else. Recognize what is coming into your field. Ask yourself, is that actually mine? Is that a part of my reality? Is that a part of my blueprint in my wholeness? As a being of light and purity and innocence, right, which is all of us in our truest form, is that mine? Do I want to include it as part of my experience? Because this is a choice for you. You get to choose this. Despair and hopelessness and scarcity and fear, you get to choose if you want this to be a part of your experience and a part of your consciousness. And I say this with absolute understanding and awareness of all of the different reasons that we can experience these denser states of consciousness, because they are always states of consciousness. And it can be because, you know, it's an inherited family mental illness. It's a spiritual existential crisis of some sort. It's part of the initiation that you're moving through. It's a nutritional issue. It's a health issue. There can be many factors that contribute towards why you are experiencing a certain denser state of consciousness. But even within that experience, you have the power and the choice to decide if you want that to be your dominant experience. And I say this more so because I'm always very, very conscious of how I explain some of these concepts, because I do not want women who have generally very concerning problems that they are struggling with and concerning circumstances to feel that they are somehow less than because they can't think or feel or manifest their way out of it. This is not for you. Your problems are valid, and you have all of my empathy and all of my compassion for whatever you might be in right now, which also is not permanent. But for women who do have resources and do have a certain level of empowerment, you get to choose and get to decide, is this going to be part of my experience? This is a practice I have to do with myself every single damn day. When I go outside and I see that people are walking around in a sedated, zombified state, where they have no connection to anything beyond a very mundane and dense and lacking in feeling, lacking in aliveness experience. Every damn day of my existence, if I'm interacting with people, if I'm going somewhere, stepping into an environment, engaging with someone where that density is very present, I choose to stay in my energy. I choose to stay in my reality, which is filled with magic and beauty and possibility, unlimited freedom, unlimited opportunity. And even on the days when I might not be super uber connected to that magical experience, or that awareness that, yes, we live in an earthly physical dense plane, but we still have connection to those higher realms of consciousness that are so ethereal and perfect and literally brimming and overflowing with so much abundance and beauty and creativity. When you really tune into those states and you're having that uplifted experience, there is nothing else like it. In the experience of density or misery or trauma or even terror, and I've gone to some of the deeper states of absolute nightmarish, I'm talking nightmarish states, absolute horrifying states, the brink of death states of consciousness, particularly with my experience with a psychedelic, which literally initiated me into a near physical death experience. And I took 3-4 years, in fact, of my life to fully come back from that experience. So I have been to the lowest of the low. I've also been to the highest of the high. So I have an innate awareness that I have power over the state of consciousness that I want to linger in, the frequency that I want to be fine-tuned at, dialed to, okay? It is like a dial on a radio, and you are fine-tuning the frequency until you get to the radio station that is playing the type of music that you would like to be hearing. So when it comes to psychic protection, a lot of this is about choice. A lot of it is about awareness. It's boundaries combined with intuitive intelligence. This looks like recognizing when someone is not who they claim to be, listening to your initial impulses and trusting them. All of the rituals, all of the candle magic, all of the mantras in the world are not going to benefit you when it comes to psychic protection, unless you are honing and refining your relationship with your intuition and really listening to it, trusting it, believing it the first time. Especially important for very sensitive women who have been gaslit most of their life. Now, most women, the reason they have a hard time with this is because they're not in their bodies to begin with. They're dissociated. So it's much more comfortable, and it's probably for you become much more natural to immediately go to your intellectual processes, your mind's deciphering, trying to make a situation that seems energetically misaligned and illogical, logical. So when we are not tuned into our intuitive power, when we are not able to actually, when we're not familiar with what that even feels like when it communicates through the body, the tendency is that we gaslight ourselves by telling ourselves that we're overreacting, we're having a trauma response, we should be giving someone the benefit of the doubt, even though our intuitive wisdom is telling us the first time around, this person isn't safe. And when I say person, I do mean man, okay? Yes, I'm talking about men. So a lot of the time, when we get that first initial impulse and inkling and sensation, and you have to figure out how that is communicated through your body because it's different for everyone. For me, it's communicated often through the back of my spine, through my womb. There's a tightening that happens in my womb. There's a contraction and a closing that happens in the whole of my body, but I always feel a tingling in my spine. I always feel like a tightening in my womb and just a general feeling of repulsion when it comes to someone that is telling me that they're someone, but energetically I can feel that that's not true. So you should be asking yourself, does this person's words match with their energy, with their actions? Do I have a list of evidence to support what they're saying? As a woman, you should not be giving anyone the benefit of a doubt, okay? I never give anyone the benefit of a doubt. In fact, one of my skills as a quadruple Scorpio that I very much pride myself in, I mean, I'm not going to put it down to what zodiac sign you are, but I will say being a Scorpio dominant woman is that I never give people the benefit of a doubt. I never just assume that someone comes with good intentions. I know too much about the human psyche. I know too much about the male and the female psyche and about the average person and their unconsciousness and their shadow and how we behave and we act when we're operating from our primal needs and desires. I know too much. So I never give someone that I'm considering going into business with, considering working with, considering taking on as a client, the benefit of the doubt. You have to move through the world like this. You have to approach your relationships like this, because if you don't, I'm sure you can see from experience that you get in trouble. Other questions that you should be asking yourself in the context of relationships: does this person feel trustworthy? Are they unreliable? Do they seem emotionally volatile? Are they consistent? All of this information matters. And when we bypass our intuitive intelligence with justifications, intellectualizing or navigating relationships with logic, when actually what is required is to sit with our body and get a sense of what it's telling us, what it's showing us in advance, tracking the energy of a situation, right? If we don't go through that process, what is the outcome? Betrayal, disappointment, wasted time, wasted energy, etc. Now, of course, sometimes you have to go through that process. You have to experience these things because otherwise you'd never know, right? This is also part of your human learning experience. So you should never shame yourself. You should never beat yourself up. You should never punish yourself because you didn't catch certain red flags or, misalignments. But this is about developing an awareness for the future so that you get quicker, and sharper and more refined in your intuitive perception of what is going on. What are the energetics and the dynamics that are playing out in this situation? So psychic intelligence begins with listening to that intuitive, that bodily feedback. We feel our intuition in the body, okay? That spiderly sense, that energetic intelligence. Every single being, every sentient being on the planet has that instilled within their nervous system, within their energy field as part of their survival strategy. So it begins with getting back in touch with the intelligence of your soma, of your being, which existed long before you developed your intellectual faculties. Obviously, when we are children, we can't necessarily implement strategy or make use of what we receive intuitively, but it's there as a child. You knew things as a child. You knew things about your family situation, about your parents, about the role that you were being insisted or asked to play, burdened to play, to maintain the family foundation. You knew things when it came to the dream that you were here to pursue and the desires that you were here to fulfill. You didn't need to go check your astrology chart. You didn't need to go to a tarot card reader, although all of those things are lovely things to do if that's what you need as support. But you didn't need any of that because as a child, you knew what you were here to do. You knew what mattered to you the most. You knew what to give your attention to and what to phase out, what was background noise, what was unimportant, what was unnecessary and unproductive. That's your intuitive intelligence, which is also a manifestation of your soul's intelligence, your soul's knowing. So this intuitive wisdom has been with you far longer than any of the other forms of intellectual awareness or mental processes that you've developed prior to that time. I also want to mention that healthy psychic protection makes you feel grounded, not defensive, not paranoid, not overly questioning someone or their motives or a situation. It increases your clarity and your self-trust. And it also reduces emotional residue after interactions. Again, coming back to my earlier points at the beginning of this video, this is important because when we don't trust our intuition, when we don't trust that we're protected and that we can protect ourselves, we go into extremes. Extreme isolation, extreme protection, shutting everyone out, not allowing anyone close, not for too long, not being able to trust anyone. And you might have noticed that there comes a time in your life, and particularly we are being moved towards this place increasingly now in 2026, there comes a time in which you need to begin stepping out and developing communication and connections and relationships and overcoming this fear of disappointment and betrayal, which is actually you not being able to trust yourself, you not believing that you will know how to handle certain relationships or situations or communications. And so the response to that is extreme protection. But it's not really protection, it's just isolation and avoidance. Because real protection is, I'm going to step into the situation, I'm going to have communication with this person, I'm going to engage with them with my boundaries in place, I'm going to communicate those clearly through my body language, through my voice, all of the things that you have the power to do as a woman. And when I leave that communication or that situation, I'm then going to decide based on how I feel intuitively if it's really aligned for me. This is an empowering way to deal with your relationships and to move through the world, trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, trusting that you are protected, that you have enough protection to know that whatever communication you have with anyone, even if they're sending you weird energy afterwards, even if they've attached onto you, even if they're obsessing over you, even if they've, sent some weird energy into your space that you can feel lingering in your energy field and that feels invasive, you have the tools and the power to be able to remove it instantly, right? No dwelling, no worrying if it's still with you. You know how to clear it from your space because you've already created a rock solid, energetic contract with yourself where you know how to recognize what is yours, what is not yours, and what is not yours, you can easily let it go. You just allow the energy and the emotions to pass through you, refusing to take on any of the energies or narratives that have been sent your way. So a really, really simple practice I want to leave you with is you can ask yourself the following. When you're noticing a collective thought form, an emotion, an energy that is manifested in your reality, or you're experiencing something that doesn't feel quite in resonance, just ask yourself, does this deserve to take up space in my reality and my energy field? Do I want this energy in my reality? Do I have the power to decide what energies I let in? And equally as much so, refuse entry? The answer is yes. So I choose to pay no attention to what has been sent my way. I do not give this permission to take up space in my energy field. You can also ask yourself, is this mine? Is what I'm feeling truly mine? And if your body immediately relaxes, is because it's not yours. And often, again, simply asking the question, simply having self-awareness enables that energy to immediately leave your field. It really doesn't take much more than that. And then you can just imagine it draining into the ground, into the earth, right? You're sending it back to the earth. You're letting the earth deal with it. Down through your body, down through your feet. Very simple practice. That's all it takes. But this is about you reclaiming complete control, complete authority and autonomy over your experience. Every single day of your life, you get to decide that. Nobody else. Okay, my love, that's all for today's very, very long episode. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Please make sure that you do follow me via the Spotify app if you are not already, so that you automatically get updated every time a new episode is released. A quick reminder for women who are seeking to apply for one-to-one mentorship with me this year. I am limiting my availability this year as I'm moving my business in a different direction. So if you are someone who is in the process of developing your business idea, your creative career path, you are looking to build up the confidence to make yourself more visible, to grow your audience, to monetize your creative work, to run a spiritual business, or to step into the role of leadership and begin making money as a full-time mentor or spiritual guide, or a woman who is doing creative work of some sort, and you're looking to develop the tools, the confidence, the strategy, the business formula to be able to monetize your work in that way, then this is part of a work that we're doing inside of my Aquarian business immersion for women, artists and creatives specifically. I am also launching my Priestess membership that is going to be out hopefully mid-March, if not the end of March, which consists of 90 teachings for the woman on the priestess path who wants to begin working with ritual, with magical practice, understanding the energies of this year and the next decade, and how to work with the magic that is unfolding currently with all of these astrological transits through ritual, through showing up to her purpose and calling with more confidence and more consistency. So essentially, regardless as to how you choose to work with me, or what teachings you choose to consume from me, or whether you join the membership, whether you join the business immersion, we are covering very, very similar themes throughout all of them. But if you want to understand what is the right one for you, what is the right way for you to work with me personally, I would highly recommend that you visit the show notes now and that you go book in an inquiry call so that you can speak to either me or my calls assistant, Sabrina. Sabrina is also a student of my past work, so she is very well resourced to be able to answer any of the questions that you might have about my working style, or you can just speak to me directly on a 10-minute call and figure out what is the best way for you to work with me for this coming year. As I mentioned, I do have very limited availability when it comes to one-to-one mentoring because I am focusing a lot of my energy in a different direction this year. So don't sit on the decision for too long. The one-to-one mentorship that I am currently offering also is going to increase in price by February 28th. So if you feel called to work with me this year, do book a call. Don't be nervous about it. It's a very chill atmosphere. You don't have to get on a video call, but it's always best to talk to me in person. All right, my love, please do make sure that you share this episode with a woman who might need to hear it as always, and I will see you next time.